In the heart of a small town lived a trader everyone admired. He was wealthy, charming, and his shop was always full of customers. But what no one knew was that behind his bright smile, he was hiding a dark secret. One day, a poor widow came to buy food for her hungry children. She trusted him with her last coins, but he cheated her with a broken scale and laughed in his heart. He thought he was smart. He thought no one would ever know. But from that very moment, his downfall began. And what happened to him will shock you and teach you a lesson you will never forget. Before we dive into this powerful story, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss stories that inspire, warn, and change lives. Now, let us begin the story of the trader who cheated his customer and the misfortune that followed him. Ezechi was the most talked-about trader in Umudiki town. His shop stood tall in the middle of the market, painted bright blue, with wide shelves stacked full of rice, beans, sugar, oil, and spices. Children often ran to peep into his shop, admiring the golden tins of milk that shone under the sun. To strangers, he looked like a man who had everything: money, respect, and happiness. When he walked through the market, his long white kaftan flowed behind him, and people greeted him with smiles. "Good morning, Ezechi the great trader," some called. He would nod and wave his hand, his mouth stretched into a gentle smile. But inside his heart, he was thinking of something else. Not how to serve people, but how to take more from them without being caught. Ezeki's secret was hidden in his wooden scale. It looked normal, but he had cleverly adjusted the weights. When he measured food for poor customers, the scale always cheated them. If they paid for 2 cups of rice, they got 1.5. If they paid for a bottle of oil, they got less. Nobody suspected at first. They thought he was honest because he dressed well, spoke softly, and even gave gifts to community leaders. His wife Nena sometimes noticed things. She would say,
"My husband, are you sure the scale is correct? These villagers trust us. Please don't play with their sweat."
but Ezechi brushed her words aside. "Nena, you worry too much. Look at this shop. Look at the money we count every night. Do you want me to remain poor like those farmers? This is business, and business is for the wise." Nena sighed, but kept quiet, though her heart was uneasy. That morning, the sky was heavy with clouds. A cold breeze swept through the market, shaking the tarpaulin roofs of the stalls. Ezechi sat behind his counter, counting shiny coins, when a woman entered. Her wrapper was faded, her slippers old and worn. She carried a small bag close to her chest as if it was her treasure. It was Amaka, a widow with 3 hungry children. She had worked for weeks washing clothes for neighbors to save just enough money to buy food. She placed the bag of coins on Ezeki's counter with trembling hands. "Good morning, sir," she said softly. "Please give me rice. My children have not eaten since yesterday." Ezechi looked at her with fake pity. "Ah, poor woman. Don't worry. I will give you what you can afford." He took the coins, heavier than they looked to Amaka, and poured rice into the scale. But the scale, as always, was not true. He gave her less than she paid for. Amaka, tired and hungry, did not notice. She carried the small bag of rice close to her chest and whispered, "Thank you, sir. May God bless your hands." But as she turned to leave, Ezechi smirked. Inside his heart, he laughed. "Bless my hands. My hands have already blessed themselves." He tossed the extra coins into his wooden box, feeling proud of his cleverness. Outside, the rain began to fall, slow at first, then heavy. Amaka struggled to cover her rice with her wrapper as she walked home. She had no idea that the man she trusted had stolen from her. Back inside the shop, Ezechi leaned back in his chair, humming. To him, life was good. To him, business was working. But what he did not know was that from the very moment he cheated that poor widow, a storm was rising against him, a storm that no wealth could stop. The rain poured for hours that day, flooding the dusty roads of Umudiki. Amaka returned home with her little bag of rice, her clothes soaked. Her 3 children ran to meet her, their eyes bright with hope. "Mama, did you bring food?" the youngest cried, tugging at her wrapper. Amaka forced a smile, though her heart was heavy. She opened the bag and poured the rice into a pot. But when she saw how little was inside, her face fell. "Oh, Lord," she whispered, "is this all? I thought I paid for more." She cooked it anyway. The children ate, but the portions were small. When they asked for more, Amaka's eyes filled with tears. She stroked their heads and said, "Tomorrow will be better." Yet deep inside, she wondered why the rice was less than she had expected. Word spread quickly in a small town. By the next market day, whispers started floating around. "Have you noticed that when you buy from Ezechi, the measure is never full?" one woman said to her friend. "Yes," another replied. "I thought it was only me. My basket always seems lighter." Some were afraid to complain openly. After all, Ezechi was rich, respected, and had friends among the chiefs. But the whispers grew louder. One morning, a poor farmer named Obi walked into Ezeki's shop. He had just sold firewood and wanted to buy salt. When Ezechi measured it, Obi frowned. "Trader, is this truly the right measure?" It looks less. Ezeki's smile vanished. He leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Obi, do you doubt me? Do you think I, Ezechi the great trader, will cheat you? Take your salt and leave before I change my mind." The farmer, embarrassed, said nothing more. He carried the salt away, but as he walked, he muttered, "One day, truth will expose every lie." That evening, Nena tried again to speak to her husband. She had heard the whispers too. "My husband," she began carefully, "people are talking. They say you cheat them. Please, for the sake of our children, for the sake of God, let us be honest. Riches built on lies do not last." Ezechi slammed his fist on the table. "Nena, enough of this foolish talk. Do you know how hard it is to grow a business? Do you know the tricks others use? If you cannot support me, then be silent." Tears welled in her eyes, but she obeyed. The days rolled by. The whispers spread beyond the market. Even travelers began to sense something. One hot afternoon, a stranger stopped by to buy beans. When he received his goods, he studied them, shook his head, and said in a cold voice, "Trader, you think you are wise. But know this, the tears of the poor never fall to the ground without God seeing them. Your wealth will bring you sorrow." Ezechi froze for a moment. The stranger's eyes burned like fire. But then he forced a laugh and waved his hand. "Go away, old man. My wealth is my proof that I am blessed." The stranger walked out into the sun, leaving behind a silence that filled the shop. That night, as Ezechi lay on his bed, he could not sleep. The words echoed in his head, "Your wealth will bring you sorrow." He turned from side to side, angry at himself for even remembering them. "Nonsense," he whispered. "They are jealous. That is all." But deep inside, his heart was no longer at peace. Outside, the town kept talking. The once clean name of Ezechi began to carry dust, and soon dust would become mud, and mud would become a storm that no man could hide from. The sun rose gently over Umurike, casting golden light on the busy market. Traders spread their wares, children ran with baskets, and women bargained loudly. But inside Ezechi's shop, the mood was not as bright. For weeks, he had noticed small troubles creeping in like ants into sugar. First, one of his biggest sacks of beans spoiled, eaten by weevils, though he had stored it carefully. Then, one of his shelves collapsed, breaking jars of oil and soaking the floor. He grumbled, but told himself it was nothing serious. But trouble does not knock once. It keeps knocking. One evening, as rain clouds gathered, his most trusted servant, Cheek, came to the shop early. Cheek had worked for him for 3 years, sweeping the floor, carrying heavy bags, and serving customers. But that day, when Ezechi returned from the market square, Cheeky was gone. So was a bag of money. Ezechi's face turned red with anger. He shouted at the neighbors, "Did anyone see that boy? He has stolen from me. He will suffer, I swear it." But no one answered. Some shook their heads. Some looked away. Deep inside, they were not surprised. Who would stay loyal to a master who cheated others? The next week brought another blow. His small farmland, where he grew cassava, suddenly failed. While other farmers harvested baskets full, his own land gave little. The plants looked weak, the tubers thin. He kicked the dry soil with his sandals and cursed loudly. Why me? Why always me? That night, as thunder rolled across the sky, Ezechi sat in his shop, counting what little money was left. The sound of the storm outside reminded him of something. Amaka's trembling voice when she said, "May God bless your hands." He remembered, too, the fiery words of the stranger. "Your wealth will bring you sorrow." For the first time, fear touched him. His heart beat faster. He stood up quickly, shook his head, and muttered, "No, these are just coincidences. Misfortune cannot touch me. I am too wise, too strong." But deep inside, his spirit was restless. That night he dreamed. In his dream, he stood in his shop, but the shelves were empty. No rice, no beans, no oil, just dust. A shadowy figure pointed at him and said, "This is the reward of dishonesty." He woke up sweating, his body trembling. When he told Nena, his wife, she looked at him with sad eyes. "My husband, God is warning you. Repent. Return what you have stolen. Make peace with the people before it is too late." But Ezechi's pride was bigger than his fear. He waved his hand and laughed bitterly. "Dreams are lies. Stop filling my head with foolishness." Yet, when he returned to the market, he noticed something he could not ignore. Some of his old customers no longer came. They passed his shop as if he was invisible and went to buy from other traders. "Why are people avoiding me?" he asked a neighbor angrily. The neighbor shrugged. "Maybe they are tired of your ways. You should know the answer yourself." Ezechi clenched his fists. Anger boiled inside him, but behind the anger was something worse: worry. His shop, once the busiest in the market, was slowly becoming quiet, and in that silence, misfortune had found its voice. The market of Umudiki was alive with voices, as always, but something had changed. Once upon a time, everyone rushed toward Ezeki's big blue shop. Now, a new trader had arrived, Udemy, a young man from the next village. Udemy's shop was smaller, his shelves fewer, but his goods were always measured with honesty. When customers paid for 2 cups, they received 2 full cups. When they paid for a bottle of oil, he filled it to the brim. He smiled at everyone, spoke kindly, and even allowed the poorest to buy on credit when they had no cash. Very quickly, people noticed the difference. "Go to Udemy's shop," one woman whispered to another. "He gives full measure." "Yes," her friend replied, "and he does not cheat like Ezechi." Soon, The whispers turned into open words. Customers began leaving Ezechi's shop half empty. He sat behind his counter, watching, as people carried their baskets past him, straight to Udemy. One afternoon, he could no longer hold his anger. As two women hurried by, he called out loudly, "Why do you pass my shop? Do I not have rice? Do I not have beans? Why do you all run to that new boy?" The women stopped, looked at each other, and one of them replied, "Because he is honest, Ezechi. We are tired of being cheated." Their words stung like sharp thorns. His pride boiled. "Liars," he shouted. "I am the greatest trader in Umudike. You will regret leaving me." But the women only shook their heads and walked away. That evening, Nena tried again. She placed a bowl of food before her husband and said quietly, "Do you see now? Honesty always wins. People no longer trust you. Please, my husband, humble yourself. Admit your wrongs. Apologize. It is not too late." Ezechi pushed the bowl away angrily. "Do you want me to kneel before peasants? Do you want me, the great Ezechi, to bow to women and farmers? Never. I would rather starve than lower myself." His voice was loud, his eyes burning with pride. Nena bowed her head, her heart breaking. She knew the storm was only beginning. Days turned into weeks. Ezeki's debts grew. With fewer customers, he sold less and less. Goods spoiled on his shelves, rats chewed his grains, and mold covered his yams. One morning, a group of villagers gathered at his shop. They were angry. "Ezechi," one man said, "we trusted you for years. But your tricks have brought pain to many homes. Children have gone hungry because of your lies." Another woman stepped forward. "You cheated me when I bought oil. My pot ran dry in 2 days instead of 5. You think we are fools? From today, I will never step into this shop again." The crowd murmured in agreement. Some shouted, "Yes, we will not support a thief." For the first time, Ezeki's face turned pale. He wanted to argue, to shout, but his voice failed him. He waved his hands and screamed, "Leave my shop! All of you, I don't need you, I will stand on my own." But even as he shouted, his heart trembled. That night, his shop was empty. He sat alone on the wooden bench, the oil lamps flickering weakly. His once busy shelves stood silent, mocking him with their emptiness. He remembered the laughter, the coins clinking, the greetings of happy customers. Now all that was left was silence. He placed his head in his hands and muttered, "How did I fall so low?" But pride, like a chain, held him tightly. Instead of confessing, he whispered to himself, "Tomorrow I will find a way. Tomorrow I will rise again." But tomorrow held no promise for him, only deeper darkness. Ezechi woke to a heavy silence in his shop. For the first time in years, there were no customers, no children peeking through the windows, no women bargaining for rice or oil, no coins clinking in the wooden box. Only the faint sound of the morning wind through the market's broken tarpaulin roofs. He counted the few coins he had left. Not enough to buy new rice. Not enough to pay off the growing debt he owed to the traders who had once trusted him. His stomach twisted as fear replaced anger. That morning, a creditor named Okoro arrived. A tall man, stern and angry, he slammed a fist on the counter. "Ezechi, you owe me for the last 3 months. Pay me now, or I take everything in this shop." Ezechi's face drained of color. "Okoro, please, I will pay soon. Just a little more time," he stammered. "No. Time is over," Okoro shouted. He grabbed sacks of grain, overturned jars, and left Ezechi standing among broken goods. Ezechi tried to rebuild. He borrowed money from one small trader, promising to pay double. But that money was stolen by the winds of misfortune, or perhaps by the bad choices he had sown long ago. Each step he took to save his business led him deeper into trouble. At home, Nena and the children had left months ago. Their absence haunted him. He remembered the mornings when his children ran to greet him, the nights when his wife cooked fresh meals for him, and the laughter that once filled the rooms. Now the house was empty. Only silence answered him. Ezechi's pride had kept him from admitting his mistakes. He had ignored the whispers, laughed at warnings, and treated honest advice like poison. And now, loneliness had replaced his wealth. Anger had replaced his respect, and fear had replaced his pride. One afternoon, as he sat on the dusty floor counting coins that were barely enough for one meal, he noticed a small package at his shop door. It was wrapped in brown paper, tied with string. Inside was a folded note. Ezechi's hands shook as he opened it. The words were written neatly, almost softly. "I forgive you for the day you cheated me, Ezechi, but I hope you learn to be honest before it is too late." His eyes widened. The note was from Amaka, the widow he had once deceived. He remembered her soft eyes, her trembling hands, and her children's hungry faces. His chest tightened, and tears filled his eyes. For the first time in years, Ezechi wept, not for his lost wealth, not for his ruined business, but for the pain he had caused others. The full weight of his dishonesty pressed upon him. He realized that no amount of pride or cleverness could undo the hurt he had caused. That night, he prayed for the first time in years. "Lord," he whispered, "I was wrong. I cheated. I lied. I have hurt people. Please, guide me. Teach me to live honestly." The days that followed were not easy. Ezechi had little left, but he began to sell honestly, giving full measures, fair prices, and kind words. Slowly, some customers returned. They were cautious at first, watching him carefully, but they noticed the change. Even though he was no longer wealthy, he felt something he had never felt in years: peace. The empty shop that once seemed a prison now felt like a place of learning. He remembered Amaka's forgiveness and knew he could begin again, not as the great Ezechi who cheated, but as the humble Ezechi who learned. The months that followed were quiet in Umudiki town. Ezechi's shop no longer shone with the wealth it once had. Its shelves were smaller, the paint had faded, and the jars of oil and sugar were fewer. But inside, something had changed far more important than the shop itself. Ezechi had changed. He sold honestly now. If someone paid for 10 cups of rice, he gave 10 full cups. If someone bought a bottle of oil, he poured it to the very top. Every day, he counted his small coins with a smile, not because they were much, but because they were earned fairly. His reputation did not return immediately. Many remembered the cheating, the lies, and the broken promises. Some still whispered in the market, "There goes Ezechi, the dishonest trader." But over time, the whispers changed. People began to see his honesty, his fairness, and the care with which he treated everyone who came to his shop. One afternoon, Amaka walked past the shop. She had prospered because of her hard work and the kindness of the townspeople. She paused and looked at Ezechi. Their eyes met for a moment. Ezechi bowed slightly, silently thanking her forgiveness, and she nodded once before moving on. That small gesture stayed with him. It reminded him that kindness and forgiveness could heal even the deepest wounds. Ezechi thought about the years he had wasted, years filled with greed, lies, and selfishness. He thought about the poor widow, the farmers, the children, and even his own family. How many people had gone hungry or suffered because of his selfish ways? How many nights had he spent in pride, thinking he was clever? Tears rolled down his cheeks as he whispered to himself, "All this wealth, was nothing compared to peace. All this pride was nothing compared to love. Only honesty lasts. He made a vow that day. He would never cheat again. He would never let greed rule his heart. He would use his hands and his mind for fairness, kindness, and service to others. Though he never regained his former riches, Ezechi found something far greater: respect, trust, and a calm heart. People still remembered his fall, but they also remembered his change. And in telling his story, parents would warn their children, and neighbors would advise each other. Cheating may give quick money, but it always brings misfortune. Honesty may be hard at first, but it brings peace, respect, and lasting success. And now, my dear friends, the story of Ezechi is also a lesson for you. Think about your own life. Are there moments when pride or greed may tempt you? Will you choose honesty, even when it is difficult? Remember, every action has a consequence, and every choice writes your future. If the story of Ezechi touched your heart, if it reminded you of the power of honesty and the danger of greed, then make sure to subscribe to this channel and turn on the notification bell. More stories like this, full of life lessons and wisdom, are waiting for you. Stay honest, stay kind, and never forget, your choices today shape your tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching.